Okay, you might remember the ROG Phone 3. It was the battery life champion, it had literally the best speakers on a mobile device, it was my gaming smartphone of the year, and this close to being my overall smartphone of the year. So, you could probably imagine that when Asus came out and said, we've got an ROG Phone 5, an ROG Phone 5 Pro, and an ROG Phone 5 Ultimate, which I will get to, I practically wet myself with excitement. Not like that. So this is how it was packaged. I wouldn't say it's hugely exciting, given how some of their last phones were presented, but it is still way above 2021 standards. It comes with a sticker pack, a classic ROG style, not very protective but still stylized case, and not just a charger, but a much faster charger than last year, at 65 watts. You gotta respect that decision. It would have been very easy now that Samsung and Apple aren't giving one to just say, we care about the environment too, and then just drop it. But they didn't, and we've also got a pretty nice braided USB-C cable, and the phone. And what you're seeing right now was also the very first time that I'd seen this thing. I hadn't had any leaks, I hadn't had a briefing, I was going in blind. That was pretty much my first impression. Bearing in mind that these are the phones we came from, and that this is the kind of design quality we've experienced in 2021, I was just kind of expecting a little bit more. Like maybe a design that took last year's further to demonstrate how it's now gotten more powerful. Maybe chrome accents to give it some class. Or maybe even just a matte finish, given how much time people are going to spend gripping this thing. It's just a little plain. And I don't mind plain. But if that's what they were going for, then there are many phones out there with better execution of this concept. Also, this whole pixel art logo on the back, it is configurable, and it's never going to be a negative to have an option like that. But I am just kind of surprised that they're still doing this 4 generations in. Like, I totally get having LEDs in a PC case. When I built my own PC 7 or so years ago, I loaded that thing up. But there's a distinct difference between a computer that's powered through the mains and a mobile, where battery life is a precious resource. Let alone the simple fact that what proportion of time on your phone are you looking at the back? And even when you are looking at the back, isn't your hand just gonna cover it? To be clear, I don't hate this design. It feels great, it's hand-friendly, and the materials are high-end. I'm just slightly disappointed by how remarkably okay it looks, given how much of an impression some of their past phones made on me. But then I started using it, and it became very clear that actually, this phone is anything but just okay. It takes the already extreme aspects of last year's ROG Phone 3, and it cranks that lever as far as it can possibly go with current technology, with just one important caveat. So, one of the first things you'll feel when you start using this phone is that they care. As well as keeping the charger while others dropped it, this still has a headphone jack with a high-end DAC to support it, in a year where it's almost a given that a flagship phone won't have that. And they've put so much thought into the software. Like this is the setup screen, complete with its own setup screen soundtrack. They've got this augmented reality experience, where you can see the comic on the retail box come to life when viewed through the phone. They let you choose whether you want the crazy gamer aesthetic or something much more minimal. It is shockingly easy to find and apply themes, and they completely change how the phone looks. And it's probably not a coincidence how much the standby key on this phone sounds like the menus in Pokemon games. Like, this is Pokemon. This is the ROG Phone. Point is, with this phone you're getting a device that feels like it was meticulously designed, one that feels like it was made with you at the front and center. And it is backed by a serious spec sheet. A 144Hz AMOLED Gorilla Glass Victus display with about twice the touch responsiveness of any other flagship. A Snapdragon 888 chipset paired with 8 to 16 gigs of fast LPDDR5 RAM and a 6000 mAh battery. If early gaming phones were a house, this is the entire city. But it's actually even more than its specs make it seem. Like, take performance. You might look at the fact that this has the same chip as the US Galaxy S21 Ultra and think, cool, flagship level performance. But it's actually more than that. So, using the maxed out models of both phones, what I did was to run 3 back-to-back Antutu benchmarks to test not just performance, but also how well performance can sustain with continued use. And it turns out, at least according to this benchmark, the ROG phone ends up almost a generational leap ahead. It does get externally hotter though. While the Samsung was sitting at just under 40 degrees Celsius, this was well on its way to 50. But I did reach out to Asus and ask them about this, and they said that was just the cooling mechanism doing its job. They said that it's designed to basically take heat away from the chipset as quickly as possible, even if that does mean it makes the outside hotter. And if we then run that same test again, now using the Aeroactive Cooler for the ROG, which lets it activate an even higher performance mode called X Mode Plus, the gap gets even wider. It doesn't seem to raise the max score, but after 3 more back-to-back Antutu tests, it does mean that the peak level of performance can be sustained continuously. And this whole deal of getting a gaming phone, with this it's about more than just frame rates and points in benchmarks. You get every feature of the ROG Phone 3, everything from capacitive triggers to the Game Genie pull-out menu to crosshair customization. But compared to that phone, this one takes them even further. Like, the capacitive triggers are now even more sensitive. You can manually tune your own CPU and GPU speeds. You can add advanced motion controls to games that would normally be controlled using on-screen buttons. You can even invert your screen colors to potentially better highlight enemies. There is no doubt in my mind that this is the most settings I have ever seen on a phone. You can build your own custom display profile, have full control over system animation speeds without going into developer settings. You can pick which icons will show up in your status bar, and that's without even touching on the ridiculously intricate performance and battery saving profiles, or the ability to schedule times when your phone can switch between them. Honestly, just for the sake of making this video concise, we can't even cover all of them. And even if 95% of these features will go right over most people's heads, the point is, you can hand this phone to anybody while gaming, and they will notice something impressive about it. It could be how instantaneous and snappy the display feels. It could be the fact that the phone fits really well in the hands, or quite possibly, and quite probably, the in-game audio. This audio system, honestly, like I already mentioned that the ROG Phone 3 had the best speakers you could get on a phone, this takes that. It dials up the audio software to the next level, whilst adding in 35% larger sound chambers. This sound is so good that I've had multiple occasions where I've been scrolling on a feed and I go past a video. It autoplays, and I've been so taken aback by the sound coming from it that I've taken a second to soak it in, and then scrolled back up and actually watch that video. It's the closest a phone has come to making it feel like the person you're watching is actually sitting right there in the room with you. The main cost to this is the fact that we do have a pretty significant forehead and chin, which do make the phone look a little dated in 2021, but I know some gamers prefer this as something to grip on. And if you are enjoying this video, then a sub to the channel would be, well, hopefully not dry. Now, probably the best example of Asus's approach to this phone is what they've done with the battery. Last year's ROG Phone 3 already had extreme battery life, but this time we have not just a 6,000 mAh capacity, but literally every battery protection mechanism under the sun. They've knocked the charging power up from 30 watts to 65 watts, all while actually keeping the charging temperatures lower to prolong the lifespan of the battery. This phone is so extreme in some ways that it's almost easy to forget that it starts at just €799. Yeah, I was only given euro prices, but for context, the base Galaxy S21 is $849. So, is that it then? Did Asus just do it? Did they just win the smartphone market? Well, almost. But no. See, one thing becomes very clear when you use this phone. Asus has listened to their community. If their core audience has told them they want something, it's here. And that makes this phone amazing for that group of people. But by focusing only on that, I think it's fallen into a bit of a trap. Think about it. If Asus is relying on feedback from the most engaged portion of their last phone's user base, who are those people? Most probably competitive gamers, maybe esports players, that 5% of enthusiasts who actually do use the already ridiculous number of features it had. Don't get me wrong, it's important to listen to those users, but by allowing this very small subsection to dictate the features of your next phone, you're actually going to make a device that's even more focused on the things it already did well, like making these capacitive buttons even more sensitive. And you're going to focus less on actually addressing your weaknesses, like the camera system. Now, let me just make a distinction here. This does not mean we have a bad camera. I labelled the ROG Phone 3s as good enough, and this is basically the same as that. 64 megapixel main sensor, 13 megapixel ultra-wide, 5 megapixel macro for close-ups. But every year as other devices are improving, and let's be honest, improving fast when it comes to cameras, your expectation of what you should get goes up. And so, while this isn't necessarily a worse camera than the phone we got last year, it is worse value than that when compared to the alternative options now. When there's plenty of light, it's fine. It can even be good. But as soon as you step indoors or anywhere bordering on low light, it really exposes how much progress competitors like Samsung have made, especially if you're going to be using that ultra-wide camera. Or the macro camera. Also, while it does have what I would call good quality electronic image stabilization, there's no optical image stabilization. And it's not just a case that they've skimped on cameras on the base model so that they can hit a certain price, but if you pay more you get more. They have an ROG Phone 5 Pro, they have an ROG 5 Ultimate Edition, and the cameras are still exactly the same, even though that's a €12.99 phone. Don't get me wrong, this is a very cool phone. The ROG Phone 5 Ultimate comes in a much beefier package. It's a head and shoulders more exciting than what Samsung and Apple are giving with their top-end phones, and unlike the base model, here you do get that Aeroactive cooler included. But not just that. When you buy an ROG Phone 5 Ultimate, you also get a second box. And this is possibly the most extra thing I've ever seen come with a smartphone. We're talking an ROG towel and a snapback. There's these Lego-type building blocks to make an ROG logo from. They've got their own playing cards, a sticker book, and of course, badges. It took me a while to decide how I felt about this. But then I realized, wait a second, this is exactly the point I'm trying to make. See, Asus cares. Like, who even makes stuff like this? It's ludicrous. But at the same time, it's very clear that they've picked one market, one incredibly niche market, the esports level competitive Android gamer, and maybe focused a little too much on it. Like, given what you know about the base model of the ROG Phone 5, what would you improve if you were going to make a higher end model? Logic would dictate that all efforts should be focused on the camera, the most obviously lacking feature, no? What did they improve? Well, they added a screen on the back to show more intricate animations, they added yet another set of ultrasonic buttons for gaming, and they bumped the RAM up from the arguably already excessive 16GB to 18GB. Look, I'm not saying these are bad decisions. If Asus's only goal here was to just have the best gaming phone, then for now at least, they've done that. It's an extraordinary gaming phone. There's no other device on the planet with this trifecta of speakers, battery, and performance. But what's disappointing is that they were this close to a device that I could have recommended to a much wider group of people. And had they spent a bit less on configurable LEDs and arguably over-the-top niche gaming features, we would have been there. I'll finish on this note. The pricing for the base model is actually very competitive, and providing you know what you're getting yourself into, it's phenomenal at what it's trying to be. I couldn't see many people regretting their purchase. But just be aware, the further you go up this pricing ladder, the more laser-focused these devices become on a really, really niche group, at the cost of their value proposition to everyone else. Okay, thank you so much for watching. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one. Alright, we've had this coming.